Our next step is to integrate our three large components into the base component. And if this was an assessment, we want to provide a planning update. As always, before we integrate, we need some test plans. Our first test plan checks for fixed and variable expenses. And we have two test plans for no fixed expenses. In the first one, the user says that they don't have any fixed expenses. And in the second one, initially the user says they have fixed expenses, but then they change their mind and use the exit code as the first item. If you're feeling confident, please see if you can integrate the code to date into a base component. Remember to start by importing the libraries you need. And we try and put the functions in the order that we use them, beginning with our make statement, our yes/no checker, our instructions function, our blank checker, the most up-to-date version of the number checker we're going to use, our get expenses function, and of course, our currency function. Then in the main routine, I start by assuming that we've got no fixed expenses, and I default the fixed subtotal to 0 and the panda string to blank. Then we've got our main heading, and we ask the user if they want instructions, outputting them if they say yes. Next, we need to get our product details, and then we can get our variable expenses and ask our user if they have fixed expenses. If they've got fixed expenses, we're going to retrieve them, but we need to be careful because if they say yes, they have fixed expenses and then put in the exit code, our fixed subtotal will be 0. At which point we need to change the panda string so that it doesn't output an empty panda frame, and we need to set our has fixed variable back to no. We can then find our total expenses, and I've left a space for the code that's going to help me get my profit goal. Then I can go ahead and start to output the content to the user. I began by putting in the date. And instead of having a series of print statements, I've done what we did in MMF. I've set up a series of strings, and a little bit later on, I've got my list of strings so that I can both print to the user and write to file. Here's my code dealing with fixed costs. Note that if we don't have any fixed costs, we have a statement there, and we say that the subtotal is 0. And then, as advertised, I've got the list of strings that I'm writing. And as you can see, I've tested this previously because there were some places where I did need to put in my enters, and I then printed. And while I was there, I recycled from MMF and generated the file and wrote to it. So please see if you can integrate your code successfully and then test it using the test plans that I showed you earlier in this video. In the next video, I'll show you my documentation, and then we'll go on to find our profit goal.